The night was heavy with thunderclouds as lightning flashed across the savannah, casting brief light upon the village huts. The Resilient One, a 19-year-old young warrior with dark skin and braided hair adorned with beads, stood frozen as the drums fell silent. Suddenly, the Wise Elder, a 70-year-old man with gray braids and weathered skin, collapsed in the center of the fire circle. Gasps tore from the villagers as his final breath carried words of ancient weight. The elder said, "The curse returns, blood of the ancestors must awaken." The Resilient One trembled, torn between fear and duty as ancestral whispers seemed to echo in the wind. The Protector, a 21-year-old muscular male friend with cropped hair, grabbed the warrior's arm, urging him to listen. A shadowy presence loomed beyond the firelight, unseen yet felt. The earth shook faintly, as if spirits stirred. The young warrior's heart raced, their destiny ignited by a single death. Betrayal, spirits, and sacred duty collided in a single breath. The village mourned, silence broken only by the hiss of rain on embers. The Resilient One stared at the talisman, its carvings alive with strange light. The Wise Elder's last words echoed like thunder. The Protector said, "The spirits have chosen you." Fear clenched the young warrior's chest, but deep within, a fire stirred. The villagers whispered, some afraid, some reverent. The Resilient One lifted the talisman, feeling warmth spread into his palm. His vision blurred, a fleeting glimpse of the sacred temple flashing before him. The young warrior gasped, realizing his life would never be the same. The Protector stood guard, eyes sharp, shielding his friend from fearful stares. A child cried, clutching their mother's waist as villagers muttered about curses. The Resilient One said, "I did not ask for this." Yet even as doubt slipped through his lips, a heavy presence of ancestors pressed against him. The Betrayer, a 20-year-old male relative with sharp features, watched from the shadows, envy burning in his eyes. He whispered to himself, "It should have been me." The night deepened, but destiny had already marked its path. The Resilient One's chest tightened as visions haunted him. Flashes of rivers of blood, ancestral warriors, and the sacred temple called him forward. He whispered, "Why me?" The Wise Elder's spirit seemed to echo faintly, "Because only you carry the blood unbroken." The Protector placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, grounding him in reality. The village shaman, a 65-year-old woman with braided gray hair and beads, stepped forward. She said, "The path is dangerous, but you must walk it." The Resilient One nodded, torn between fear and duty. Dawn broke, rain fading into mist across the savannah. The village gathered at the edge of the forest, faces heavy with grief and hope. The Resilient One tightened his grip on the talisman. "Ow!" The Protector stood ready at his side, determined. The shaman chanted, her voice weaving protection. The Betrayer watched silently, mask of false concern hiding his envy. The Resilient One said, "I will go to the sacred temple." His voice trembled but carried resolve. The first step into the unknown was taken, sealing his destiny. The forest loomed vast before them, mist curling around towering baobab trees. The Resilient One, 19 years old, stepped cautiously, talisman warm in his palm. The Protector, 21 years old, marched beside him, eyes sharp, spear ready. Birds scattered from the canopy as an eerie silence followed. The Resilient One whispered, "It feels alive." Protector replied, "It watches, but we will not falter." Whispers of spirits drifted through the trees, ancient voices pressing against their ears. With each step, the Resilient One felt both dread and destiny intertwine. They paused near a river where water shimmered with strange hues. The Resilient One knelt, seeing his reflection ripple into faces of ancestors. He gasped, clutching the talisman tighter. The Protector said, "What do you see?" The Resilient One murmured, "The ones who walked before me." The water darkened suddenly, an omen of trials ahead. A hawk screamed above, circling. The forest seemed to whisper, "Choose your path." The resilient one's chest rose with trembling breath as he stepped back from the vision. A sudden rustle echoed, and from the underbrush leapt a great black panther, eyes glowing gold. The protector raised his spear instantly. The resilient one froze, every instinct screaming to run. Yet the talisman pulsed with heat, urging calm. The panther growled, circling, but did not strike. The resilient one whispered, "It is no beast, it is a spirit." The protector said, "Then prove you are chosen." Slowly, the young warrior extended his hand, trembling but steady. The panther's growl softened, testing his courage. The panther's gaze pierced into the resilient one's soul. For a heartbeat, time stilled. Images of the sacred temple, shrouded in fire and shadow, flashed in his mind. The panther lowered its head, brushing against his hand before vanishing into mist. The protector exhaled, lowering his spear, awe replacing fear. He said, "The spirits truly walk with you." The resilient one nodded, voice trembling. "But will I be strong enough?" The forest quieted, yet the burden on his shoulders grew heavier. As night fell, they built a fire at the edge of a cliff overlooking endless plains. The stars burned brightly, ancestors etched into the sky. The resilient one stared into the flames, fear and resolve mingling. The protector sat close, sharpening his spear, eyes protective. The young warrior whispered, "The elder's words haunt me still." The protector replied, "Do not fear destiny. Walk into it." The wind carried whispers, and far below, faint drums echoed as though spirits drummed from another world. The journey had truly begun. Dawn bled into the forest as fog coiled around roots like pale serpents. Kato, called the resilient one, led with the talisman warm against his chest. Sefu the protector paced close, spear lifted, breath slow, reading the hush. The path narrowed into Baizo Way, a corridor of thorns that hummed with old songs. Kato said, "If I bleed, let it be for truth," and stepped where shadows gathered. The briars parted like listening elders, yet barbed whispers scraped his courage. "Sefu," said spirits, "respect bold feet," though worry flickered in his steady eyes. Masks carved in bark watched with crooked smiles, patient and ancient. Kato felt doubt crawl like ants, recalling Baraka's fall, and the curse reborn. He said, "I am my ancestor's heartbeat," and the talisman throbbed once, clear and firm. The thorns bowed, revealing a shrine of red stones veined with ash that breathed heat. The shrine pulsed, and a hush fell, deeper than breath. Smoke rose in spirals, shaping Baraka's face in amber light. Kato bowed, heart pounding like a drum's first strike. Baraka said, "Strength without memory breaks," his voice threaded with ash. Sefu lowered his spear and listened as the forest leaned inward. Kato said, "Teach me to hold what I am," fear and need braided in his words. The spirit answered, "Name your mother's names, and cross." Kato spoke the lineage taught by Mother Nia, each name a bead on a cord. The smoke brightened, then dimmed, testing resolve. His tongue shook, yet the last name landed whole. The shrine opened, revealing a path carved by footsteps older than iron. The path bent to a sunlit glade where silence rang like metal. Kwezi, their cousin, stepped from reeds with a smile sharpened by hunger. Kato tensed as the talisman cooled, wary of the change. Kwezi said, "Brother, I bring help," but his eyes flickered like knives. Sefu shifted, reading the edges of the lie with a warrior's patience. Hyena spirits uncoiled at Kwezi's heel, laughing without mouths. Kato said, "Stand with us or stand aside," voice thin yet steady. Kwezi's grin frayed, pride burning like dry grass. The hyenas lunged, and Sefu moved first, cutting the rush in 2 strokes. Kato held ground, chanting the ward, Mother Nia taught beneath stormlight. Kwezi flinched as the spirits recoiled, then vanished into reeds like a shadow swallowing itself. After the clash, wind raked the trees, and quiet returned like a bandage. Sefu knelt, breath ragged from effort. though unbroken. Kato's hands shook with the residue of fear and song. He said, I chose you over the chase, and shame softened his jaw. Sefu, said loyalty, is the blade that never dulls, and steadied him. Kato gathered leaves of bitter scent, remembering Mother Naya's lesson. He crushed them with water, spread balm on Sefu's forearm, and hummed a low prayer. The pain eased, and the talisman warmed as if approving the choice. The forest brightened, birds returned, and the path widened like a promise. Nizi Baraka's voice rustled, mercy sharpens courage. Kato breathed deeper, and the world felt less heavy. They reached a gorge where a vine bridge swung above a thunder of mist. Far off, the sacred temple teased the horizon like a memory. Kato tested the chords, palms slick, heart pacing a war beat. Sefu said, I go behind you, and I will catch the wind you do not see. Kato stepped, each plank groaning like old bone. The talisman cooled, asking trust without proof. He said, I walk by the breath of those before me, and kept moving. Gusts struck, but his rhythm found the bridge's hidden song. Sefu spoke, hold the center, let fear pass by, voice level as stone. The far post rose, nearer with each breath. Kato touched earth again, and felt taller than his doubt. The path bent into a canyon where echoes carried whispers not their own. Kato, the resilient one, felt the talisman dim as if afraid. Sefu's spear glimmered in thin light, his eyes scanning walls of stone. From the shadowed ridge stepped Kwezi, the ambitious relative, face carved with pride. He said, you walk toward glory that belongs to me. Kato froze, heart torn between blood and destiny. Sefu's grip tightened on his spear, body ready for betrayal's sting. The canyon walls groaned as if listening, and Kwezi's smile widened like a knife in the dark. Kwezi descended slowly, each step echoing like a drumbeat of betrayal. He said, the spirits speak to me too, cousin, and they chose me. Kato's jaw tightened, fear replaced by sorrow. The talisman grew cold, testing loyalty against kinship. Sefu said, lies do not become you, Kwezi. Shadows shifted, forming vague shapes like hyenas circling. Kwezi's gaze sharpened with jealousy, hands twitching as if holding unseen power. Kato whispered, you are my brother in blood, but not in spirit. The canyon seemed to shudder at the rift carved between them. The canyon wind screamed as Kwezi raised his hand, summoning shadows that twisted into clawed beasts. Kato felt his chest tighten, yet he planted his feet firmly. Sefu lunged, spear gleaming, cutting through the first wraith. Kwezi laughed, voice sharp with bitterness, you cannot outrun fate. Kato shouted, this is not fate, it is hunger. The talisman burned, flaring against the creatures. Shadows recoiled, but more emerged. Betrayal's sting seared deeper than any wound. Kato knew this fight was not of blades alone, but of spirit and will. Dust swirled as Kato dropped to his knees, chanting the lineage of mothers. Each name cut through shadow, a song of blood unbroken. Kwezi faltered, his conjured beasts flickering. Sefu shouted, hold fast, brother, your voice carries us all. Kato's breath tore, but his eyes blazed with fire, the talisman pulsing with each name. Kwezi's face twisted with rage and sorrow, whispering, why not me? The canyon echoed with the answer, not in words, but in silence heavy as stone. Shadows shattered, leaving only betrayal, standing raw and trembling. The canyon fell silent, only the wind carrying the dust of broken shadows. Kwezi dropped to his knees, tears hidden behind pride. He said, I sought to be seen, yet the spirits turned from me. Kato stepped closer, heart aching with brotherhood and sorrow. He said, your path is not mine, but still you are my blood. Sefu lowered his spear, watching with wary respect. Kwezi turned his face away, bitterness still burning, but doubt gnawed at him. The journey pressed onward, but betrayal now walked beside them like a shadow refusing to fade. The forest thinned, opening to an ancient plateau where ruins slept under moonlight. Kato, the resilient one, felt the talisman blaze, brighter than ever before. Sefu steadied him, eyes wide at the carvings glowing along broken walls. Mzibaraka's voice rose from the wind. "Child, you were never ordinary." Kato trembled as visions painted across the sky, warriors crowned in gold, temples burning, bloodlines marked by sacrifice. He whispered, "Am I their heir?" The talisman pulsed in answer, flooding him with ancestral fire. Sefu said, "You carry the crown of those who stood before us." The truth struck like thunder, both blessing and burden. Visions deepened as shadows pulled apart, revealing a queen cloaked in fire and grief. She said, "I am Nirai, your grandmother, last guardian of the temple." Kato gasped, knees weak, heart breaking at the truth. Sefu steadied him, whispering, "Stand, brother, your blood is strong." The queen's voice thundered, "Our line was broken, but you are the bridge." Tears glistened in Kato's eyes, sorrow and pride warring within. He whispered, "I never knew my name carried such weight." The apparition faded, leaving silence heavy with destiny. The plateau itself seemed to bow before the revelation. From the shadows stepped Kwezi, face lit with both shame and hunger. He said, "If this crown belongs to you, what is left for me?" His words cracked like brittle stone. Kato turned, voice trembling but firm. "We were both chosen, but by different paths." Sefu raised his spear slightly, wary of Kwezi's bitterness. Yet the talisman pulsed with soft light toward him, as if recognizing his blood. Kwezi's eyes flickered with confusion and pain. He whispered, "Do the spirits still see me?" Kato said, "They see all of us, but choice belongs to the heart." The truth cut deeper than any blade. The plateau shook, and from the earth rose a stone pillar etched with blood-red runes. A deep voice thundered, "The heir must bind the curse or perish." Kato's breath caught, the talisman vibrating violently. Sefu braced him, saying, "This is the trial that proves truth." Kwezi stepped back, fear etched across his face, but envy lingered in his stance. Kato pressed his palm to the pillar, flames of memory rushing into his veins. He screamed but did not break, visions of ancestors guiding his hand. When the fire dimmed, the runes glowed gold instead of red. The curse had shifted, tethered to his soul. Exhausted, Kato collapsed into Sefu's arms, chest heaving. The talisman dimmed, no longer fire but steady light, calm as dawn. Kwezi stood apart, fists clenched, eyes wet with regret. He whispered, "Perhaps it was never mine to hold." Sefu said, "The truth does not weaken us, it binds us." Kato rose slowly, taller in spirit, gaze fixed toward the horizon where the sacred temple gleamed faintly. He said, "The curse is mine to carry, but the journey is ours to walk." The revelation bound them all in ways none expected, weaving blood, pain, and hope into a single thread. The sacred temple finally rose from the mists, towering with pillars carved in ancient runes that pulsed like beating hearts. Kato, the resilient one, felt the talisman grow heavy, as though weighed by generations of spirits. Sefu, the protector, gripped his spear tightly, sweat glistening on his brow, eyes narrowed with resolve. Kwezi trailed behind, torn between envy and regret, his footsteps hesitant. From the temple steps emerged the power-hungry leader, a 55-year-old man draped in crimson and gold, his voice thunderous, "You are late, child of curses." Kato's chest heaved, anger and fear rising together. He said, "I am no curse. I am the fire of my ancestors." The temple shuddered, as if recognizing the battle that had finally come. The leader's laughter cracked like thunder, echoing across the stones. He said, "Your elder's death was no fate. I commanded it to awaken the chain of blood." Kato's breath caught as rage ignited, visions of betrayal slicing his heart. Sefu snarled, "You dishonor the ancestors with every word," tightening his grip on the spear. The leader lifted his staff, runes blazing blood red, shadows swirling into armored spirits. Kwezi froze, torn between joining or resisting. Kato shouted, "Your greed will not bind us any longer." The talisman flared, golden fire meeting crimson flame, as the temple cracked under their power. The final trial had begun. The battle roared. Shadow warriors charged, blades of smoke slicing the air. Sefu met them head-on, his spear spinning with unyielding fury. Kato closed his eyes, chanting his lineage as golden fire burst outward. The leader screamed, "You cannot rewrite destiny." Kato answered, "I am destiny reborn." Flames clashed with shadows, temple stones splitting under the force. Kwezi, trembling, struck one shadow with a broken branch, then stared at his own courage with shock. Kato's voice grew louder, each ancestor's name a hammer striking chains. The leader staggered, his staff cracking, though his rage burned hotter. The temple shook like a storm. The leader staggered down from the steps, crimson cloak torn, eyes blazing with fury. He roared, "I will not be replaced by a boy with beads." He lunged at Kato, staff raised for the killing blow. Sefu intercepted, spear clashing with the staff in a thunderous spark. Kato fell to his knees, hands trembling, the talisman nearly slipping from his grip. Kwezi shouted, "Stand, cousin, the spirits need your voice." Kato gasped, then drew deep from the core of his soul. He pressed the talisman to the ground, releasing a shockwave of golden flame that threw the leader backward. The final choice loomed closer: revenge, redemption, or sacrifice. Silence broke as dust cleared, golden fire and red shadow crackling like storms colliding. Kato rose slowly, talisman blazing like a sun in his hand. He said, "This ends with me." The leader, gasping, cloak burned to rags, snarled, "Kill me and you become me." Sefu looked at Kato with fear and faith mingling. Kwezi whispered, "Choose not for vengeance but for us." Kato's breath steadied, heart pounding as ancestors' voices filled his ears. He lifted the talisman high, then drove its light, not at the leader, but at the chains of shadow binding the temple. The curse shattered with a deafening roar, releasing a river of golden light across the land. The choice was made, not revenge, but liberation. The golden river of light ebbed slowly, leaving the sacred temple cracked but no longer cursed. Dawn spread across the horizon, painting the sky in amber and violet. Kato, the resilient one, stood trembling, talisman dim but steady, its glow now soft as a heartbeat. Sefu, the protector, leaned on his spear, shoulders heavy with exhaustion but eyes shining with pride. Kwezi crouched by the ruins, his torn tunic clinging to dust and sweat, his jaw tight with unspoken grief. Kato said, "The chains are gone, yet their scars remain." The temple stones whispered back, carrying echoes of voices freed after centuries. Sefu murmured, "You broke what none before dared to touch." Kato closed his eyes, hearing the ancestors breathe through the morning wind. He whispered, "It was not I alone. The spirits walked within me, and you walked beside me." The silence that followed was sacred, heavy with reverence. The villagers arrived at the temple, their footsteps hesitant on sacred ground, now unbound. Children clung to their mothers, eyes wide with wonder as they gazed at Kato. Elders bowed low, voices trembling with ancient prayers. Sefu's chest lifted with pride, but he remained silent, letting their reverence flow toward Kato. Kwezi lowered his eyes, shame pressing down heavier than stone. One elder, gray hair wrapped in beads of bone, spoke, "The curse was our wound, but you carried its weight." Kato bowed deeply, voice shaking, "I carried nothing alone. This victory belongs to the ancestors, the living and the unborn yet to rise." The crowd murmured, tears spilling, some clasping hands, others raising fists to the heavens. The plateau felt alive again, no longer haunted, but reborn. Night returned, stars spilling like a river across the heavens. Around the temple fire, the people gathered, chanting names of ancestors long silenced. Drums beat, not in mourning, but in triumph. Sefu's voice rose above the chants, steady and proud. "Let no heart here forget the courage of one who carried us all." Kato's cheeks burned, yet his eyes glistened with tears he would not hide. Kwezi sat apart, staring into the flames, regret etched deep in his silence. He whispered to himself, I sought a crown, but found only shadow. Yet his gaze softened when Kato's hand stretched out, palm open. No shadow lasts forever, Kato said. Walk back with us. The silence that followed felt heavier than stone, as though the whole community held its breath for Quasi's answer. At dawn's edge, Kato walked alone to the highest cliff, overlooking the endless savanna. The talisman hung silent on his chest, no longer burning, but pulsing with calm light. The wind carried voices of the ancestors, soft and rhythmic, like lullabies across the plains. Kato whispered, I am no longer afraid of my name. Behind him, Sefu approached quietly, leaving respectful distance. He said, the people will follow your step now. Kato shook his head gently, eyes fixed on the horizon. I am not their ruler. I am their reminder. The sun crested, spilling fire over the land, and in that light, the temple ruins gleamed like gold. The curse was broken, but its memory lived, shaping not chains but wisdom. Silence fell with the final night, fire embers dimming, stars endless above. Kato sat cross-legged before the ruins, eyes closed, the talisman resting in his palm. He whispered, Elders, ancestors, I have carried your trial. Now I ask only for strength to carry peace. The wind stirred, carrying faint echoes of laughter, as though the ancestors themselves smiled. Sefu stood watch nearby, quiet as stone, the eternal protector. Quasi lingered close, gaze still troubled but softer, his fists unclenched at last. The village slept in peace, their breaths steady as a single drumbeat. Kato opened his eyes, gaze distant yet clear, and whispered, the journey never ends, it only changes shape. The fire faded into ash, but in the silence, the spirit of the land burned eternal.